Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another Tuesday of Water Talks. Very happy to again be bringing you work from DeKalb County and Jacobs, but looking at it from a little different angle this week compared to last week. This talk has been a long time coming. Thank you, Burhan, for joining. I know we tried to do this last year, actually, but because of legal things, we had to postpone it, but glad we could finally get to this point. So thanks, everybody, for joining us. As we begin here, just note that the Burhan has been, willing to distribute the presentation as a PDF handout. So you do have access to that in the handouts portion of GoToWebinar. So please feel free to download that and follow along as we're kind of going through this today. But again, thank you for joining Water Talks. I'll be kind of your main host today, but you'll mostly be hearing from Burhan. My name's Tim Medeiros. I'm a solutions engineer with InfoAsset, calling you all from Colorado today. I've been with InfoAsset for 5 years, working in technical support, kind of pre-sales, making sure we've got good customer success for folks using our products around the country, especially in regards to some of our asset management solutions that Burhan will be talking about today. Burhan, would you like to introduce yourself? And again, thanks for joining.
Yes, my name is Burhan Sheikh. I work with Jacobs in the Atlanta office. I'm primarily contracted out to DeKalb County as their data quality manager and their CMMS specialist. I've been working in the field for the last almost 20 years now, 19 plus years, doing data management, GIS implementations, CMMS implementations, and a whole slew of data quality checks for Jacobs and the Jacobs clients. So yeah, it's a pleasure. Thank you, Tim, for allowing me to present this. And hopefully this will be helpful for the viewers.
Always is, always is. Always love our guest presenters. Thanks for joining. Again, this is Water Talks. Our goal is to try to create as much engagement as we can in this kind of webinar format. So please do type in all your questions at any point during the presentation. We'll try to answer those as we're going through and try to get to those quicker than just waiting for all the questions to be answered at the end here. In terms of future and upcoming events, next Tuesday, we'll be doing Water Talks, but it will be just 1 hour later. So 1 hour later, we'll be doing Water Talks. And in the next couple of weeks, we'll be focusing on the infrastructure bill, which is still a bill, but we're now ahead of the game instead of, I think it was a month ago, it was looking like we might be a few weeks behind. So we're now preemptively talking about the bill ahead of its potential passing, which is kind of exciting now that we're ahead of things. And after that, we'll be getting back to water distribution modeling, specifically looking at InfoWater Pro and water quality modeling fundamentals there. And then at the same time, kind of in October and November, for those of you interested in our new cloud platform, we'll have a 3-week mini series kind of detailing the kind of rapid fire updates that are occurring within that Info 360 platform for those of you on the cutting edge of what InfoAsset is doing. It is a busy week for InfoAsset. There's also Autodesk University going on, so lots of discussions and topics there. You can check that out. Sure, there's a link right there at autodesk.com. But with that, I just have one poll question before we, and actually there's a couple. One from InfoAsset is really a poll question, and then a couple from Burhan as he hopes to kind of tailor this presentation to you all. So one thing in regards to that infrastructure bill that is looking like it'll eventually be happening here. What is your biggest interest in regards to that's still in progress, still kind of in the works infrastructure bill here? So, is about what's in it and how it just generally relates to water. What are the best ways to access some of that funding that's being made possible through that bill? And then, we've noticed, we've been doing our research. There are particular things in there that relate to stormwater and green infrastructure. We're looking to focus in on the 19th. How relevant is that to you all? And then, where are you at in terms of the bill? Do you know nothing about it? Is it all you've heard, kind of the number that's been thrown out there, however many billions and trillions of dollars, and you just want to dive in and learn a little bit more? So thanks everyone for voting there. I will close that poll now and share that. So I think everyone can see that. So it looks like, yeah, for the most part, how does it relate to water and just a little bit of everything. Certainly hit on those and appreciate the responses to that there. And then let's see, a couple other polls. Burhan, I think believe you wanted um, to show to ask here, just to tailor the next few.
Yeah, I just wanted to get a general idea of the audience that we have, and specific. The second question is what I'm interested in. It's. I want to know when you guys kind of. Let's go with the first question, and then when the second question comes up, I'll give it a better idea.
Yeah, perfect. So first one's pretty simple. Are you currently using InfoAsset Planner, which is kind of the main solution we'll be talking about today? Yes or no? And that seems pretty typical. The responses we see coming in here, 68% voted. Thank you, everybody. And close enough to 75%. Close that one. Share
Whoa.
that.
All right.
Yep. Yep. So are you currently using InfoAsset Planner? A large majority of you are not. So great. This will be new information for a lot of you. And for those of you that said yes, I think, looking at Brian's presentation, a lot of good guidance in here for folks who have the solution. And then did you want to launch that second poll now,
Yes.
Burhan? Or yep,
Go
let's
ahead
do that
and launch
now.
that second.
All right, cool. So let's hide that. And then final poll before we launch into our presentation here. And Burhan, do you want to explain this one a little bit?
Yeah, I wanted to know when do you guys consider data management as a planning phase when you get into these large projects? Kind of get an idea of how early do you think about it? So
Mhm.
sometimes, yeah, that's good.
It's even in out. I think, especially, I think your presentation is going to focus on the earlier, I imagine, you start thinking about it, the better. Just making sure it's in the right spot and that it is considered.
Yeah.
All right. I'll go ahead and close that, 70% there. That's pretty good.
So yeah,
And
that's good
share
that at
that.
least 50% said yes. And that's one thing that I wanted to kind of bring to attention before we go through this presentation is, whenever you're working on these large assessment driven projects, that data management is always a big key that you guys need to bring in. The earlier, the better, I would say, because there's a lot of infrastructure setup that needs to be in place before you go boots on the ground, right? You want a lot of the things that I'll discuss in this presentation needs to be thought about pretty early so that you can have all this in place as you before you start collecting this data, this volumes and volumes of data that will be coming to you. So that's good that a lot of people start thinking about this in the earlier phases. Hopefully, the people after this presentation will start thinking about it in the early phases as well and get those into the yes column and also the sometimes into the yes column. But that's my main point I want to bring out for this talk is please put data management as an early discussion point when you're planning for these types of large consent decree related or even large assessment driven projects that you have going on. All right, yeah,
Perfect.
we can get through the meeting.
Perfect. All right. I will let you drive the rest of this. Burhan, sorry. I know we've been talking for a year. I apologize if I got your name wrong a couple times there. But I will make you the presenter here, Burhan. And yeah, the floor is yours.
All right.
Thanks again.
Everyone can see my screen. All right, perfect.
Yep, perfect.
All right. All right. So, thank you for joining our meeting. This is in collaboration with DeKalb County and Jacobs that we are presenting this presentation. You saw this slide already. I'll skip through these real quick. Some real quick acronyms that I'll go through that you keep in mind that not everybody may know. Whenever I refer to DWM, it's basically DeKalb Department of Watershed Management. We have two basic areas that we went through when we were doing our assessment. One we are done with, the second we are doing, which we refer to as PRSARP and OSARP, which is priority area sewer assessment versus the ongoing general area assessment. SSOs are sanitary spills and overflows. LOF, COF, if you're familiar with Info Master or InfoAsset Planner, those are very common. LOF, COF, likelihood of failure, consequence of failure. One big thing that we drive for is we use NASCO certified data management deliverables. So that's a National Association of Sewer Service Companies. PACP is the standard for assessing pipelines. And MACP is the standard for assessing manholes. GIS is obviously our geographic information system. CCTV for our television of our pipes and manholes. CMMS, if you guys are not familiar with it, it's just a centralized management, maintenance management system, something similar to like CityWorks or Lucity. Those are what gets categorized as a CMMS. Artisit is a sonar of the pipe. Scream is a Jacob specific tool that we use to leverage our assessment data, as well as we use that as a centralized storage system for keeping all of our assessment data that we've collected. And a 1056, when you see that, is basically a form and a process that we follow out in the field when we find any changes to the GIS that we have to document so that we can make the changes to the county GIS and justify the change. All right. All right, so give you guys a background. DeKalb County is broken up into 3 major basins and 35 sewer sheds. That's approximately about, right now, it's actually close to 2,700 linear miles of gravity main or sewer pipes, and about 75,000 manholes that we currently have. We have about 65 pump stations in the throughout the county. You see the map on the left. We have, it's kind of color coded to the 3 different sewer sheds, which is the top half here on the top left. Then we have a middle section, and then our southwest section that those are the main sewer sheds. The areas that you see highlighted within those sewer sheds is what we called our PRSARP areas, which is the priority areas where we assessed the entire county when we began this project, and we identified areas that were that had the most aged infrastructure, the most SSOs in those areas, as well as our capacity requests that we were getting for future updates to the infrastructure in those areas. So those were our areas that we needed to focus on and get our crews out there to do all the assessment of the data. The remaining of the county is what we generalize as our OSARP area, which is an ongoing assessment. Those were not as critical needing those assessments, but yes, it was a part of the assessment that we needed to assess the entire county. All right. And the main reason we wanted to do it is we want to have a reliable sewer network. We wanted to have our capacity assurance in place. We had some flow monitoring that we needed to do, and we had some other tasks along the lines to help the county. All right. A little more of a background. In 2012, DeKalb County entered a consent decree that we had to follow to make sure that our sanitary sewer system infrastructure was up to par and was meeting all the standards. And in order for us to efficiently do everything throughout the county and get the best bang for the buck for our client, was we divided the county into 3 major projects. We kind of follow that suit when we transitioned from the priority areas to the ongoing. We try to have 3 active project areas so that we can focus and get everything identified for it. We try to get at a minimum 3 to 5 different contractors on these projects so that we can get everything done efficiently, get it to us, and then we can post-process that data. And then we took a tiered approach when we do these assessments. And when we talk about tiered approach, what we do is we 100% assess all the gravity mains using acoustic and smoke. Based off of the results we get from acoustic and smoke, we identify the ones that meet a threshold that we've identified, that we would go and CCTV those pipes to identify what really is the issue there. And if there's anything advanced that needed, we use advanced robotics to do it. We've not really done a lot with advanced robotics to do any assessment. We kind of live in the acoustic, smoke, and CCTV TISIT area of assessing data. All right, and basically what we are looking out for this is, we are trying to give all the assets a likelihood of failure, a consequence of failure, a cost analysis, and then a capacity. And this is where InfoAsset Planner / InfoMaster. Sorry if I switched the two, because when we started the project, we used InfoMaster, and then we now transitioned over to InfoAsset Planner about 2 years ago. So when I use InfoAsset Planner or InfoMaster, please, it's the same thing. It's just a different, a new naming glacier that InnoVi is introduced. But in order to get a good base map, a base setting for all the assets, that's where InfoAsset Planner came about and was able to help us get the COF, LOF, and find these highly risk areas, and using some of the approximately tools that helped us identify these major areas that we needed to focus on, as well as give a priority of the other areas that we needed to assess. All right. So like I said, we started this project back in 2014 is when Jacobs was brought on to, at that time, it was CH2M Hill. Now CH2M Hill is Jacobs. So that's when we were brought on. And when we started the project, we had our GIS was an Oracle-based SDE in full enterprise. We still made it a standard to use the NASCO, PACP, and MACP databases. Scream, like we said, it was a Jacobs tool that we used to house as well as do some verification of some historical data that we want. And we started with InfoAsset Planner to get the baseline. And we used, at that time when we started it, we used a homegrown Jacobs tool as well, which is Falcon, which was a centralized maintenance management tool that we created for the county, because at that time the county had not decided what CMMS to use. We were going through that process, but back in 2018 they finalized that they want to use CityWorks, and now fast forward to 2021, Falcon is no longer used. We are fully invested in CityWorks. Our InfoAsset Planner points to CityWorks, as well as some of our GIS as well. GIS is embedded in it. And then we also had a requirement for using a BI tool to basically manage the projects, make sure our contractors were on task, that they were assessing the right amount of data on a monthly basis. And it also gave us some tools about gauging how one contractor was doing versus another, just to make sure that everything was going through. And then we've thus transitioned from Click to Power BI as well, and we are almost go live with Power BI. We are still in the development phases of it, but we are moving everything from Click to Power BI. And then we use FME. What FME is a feature markup engine. It's used for collaborating data and doing some QC of the data. So a lot of our QC tools regarding assessment data is built into FME, where we plug in the data source, and then there's a slew of quality control checks that it goes through depending on the assessment, and then it tells us whether that database is error-free, so that we can go ahead and upload it to our Scream database for storage purposes. All right, so this is how our infrastructure looks. everything talks to each other. Everything has a place and a QC step set up in the cog of assessment that we do, right? And this was our biggest challenge when we started this project, right? We could have up to 5 contractors going out in the field assessing all different types of technology. How do we bring all that inspection data in? Where do we save it? How do we QC it? How do we get it where we can update our GIS based off of this findings? And at the end, how can we get it into a rehab package that eventually most of these high risk pipe assets that we need to figure out what kind of rehab we wanted to do. So having all this moving pieces, making sure everything was done, was collected, was QC'd, is our backbone of our system, right? We had to make sure everything that came in was thoroughly vetted and is stored so that when EPA comes calling, or when anyone and any of our commissioners come calling, we can readily get them the data they need based off of, is it spatial, or is it a certain area that you want, or is it just a general overview of how it is county-wide. So we had all these different pieces that had to sit together, talk to each other, and get it ready for delivery purpose. And this is this is the main thing that I want to kind of show you guys, is that when you're doing these large assessment driven projects, if this is not in place, you'll have a lot of issues, because you don't want things to be isolated in certain areas and not talk to other areas where it is dependent on it. We had to make sure our CMMS talked to our inspections that we were getting from the field, and vice versa. We wanted to make sure that the volumes of videos and pictures that we are getting based off of CCTV, based off of acoustic, based off of smoke, based off of MCAs, that it's getting stored in a certain location, so that is easily retrievable. We wanted to make sure our GIS was getting updated as well based off of the assessment we're doing, and vice versa, because we're not the only ones that are updating the GIS. We have the county also updating GIS. So not only does our updates need to go to the county, but we also need to get the county's updates coming to us. And this is where we use CityWorks very heavily. The web viewer that comes along with the CityWorks application, that has helped us a lot, make things a lot easier compared to prior when we were using Falcon. We didn't have that geospatial element to it for grouping and for receiving data and updating data. So that's the main key right there. All right. All right. Like I said, I told you about the assessment that we do. These are the kind of deliverables that we are getting. So we are not only getting access database, but we're getting database from all different sorts of entry points, right? So for acoustic, it's a export that comes out of the acoustic tool, which is an Excel file that we use, and then we also use ArcGIS collector as a status to let us know, okay, the field work is done on this. We need to be waiting for a submittal for all these assets and the scores that they're getting based off of acoustic. Then we also use collector for smoke inspection. So we have a whole collector app that has a built-in smoke inspection form that we have in place, where the field crew goes out, uses the app on their phone or their tablets or their laptops, and they're documenting all that data, and it's getting live synced back to us. Then there's also CCTV, which is a PACP access database, in conjunction with our GIS collector to figure out, okay, where does the field crew need to go? Okay, here the field crew's here. They've done all these areas. Now wait for the collection information to come in for the inspection. On top of that, we use the collector app for GIS corrections, right? Because basically we were not only assessing data, but we were also cleaning up and correcting our GIS. So we were getting all that information fed to us. Sonar Tisset, again, we did those on the large diameter pipes that are greater than 15 inches. One thing I forgot to mention for the acoustic in the smoke, we kept that on the small diameter pipes because that's where you get the best bang for your buck. It's less than 15 inches for smoke and less than 12 inches for acoustic. Because of the nature of the inspection, on the larger pipes, it does not yield good results and also does not give the results that you're expecting. But on the smaller pipes, it would work. And it turned out to be the benefit for us because 85% of the county is less than 15 inches of pipe. So that helped us to, identify that. And then on the larger diameter pipes, we strictly did a sonar Tisset inspection. Again, that came in as an Access PACP NASCO certified database. And using the same standards with CCTV, we use the collector app for data corrections and for status to see where the field crew is and what they're working on. One other thing was for collaboration purposes. We wanted to make sure that no two contractors were in the same area as well. So to help not having contractors step on each other's toes, we use that as a planning tool so that we can keep contractors in specific areas of the county and not have to interact with each other too much or overstep on each other's legs. And last but not least, for manholes, we just did a manhole condition level 1 assessment. Again, we use the NASCO MACP standards for the assessment data, and again, the collector app for our status as well as our updating of attributes for our manhole. So as you can see, we are out here doing multiple different types of assessments on multiple different pipes done by multiple different contractors. So at a given point, we had 5 contractors out in the field. Each contractor had 2 crews of 2 crews doing acoustic, 2 crews doing smoke, 1.5 crew doing CCTV, 2 crews doing MCAs, and about half a crew doing CCTV. So that's a lot of data that's coming in, not only tabular data, but also media data that comes in to play right here, right? Because for every defect that they find in a smoke test, we requested the contractor to take 3 photos per defect. So just think about the volume of data that's coming in, and the questions that should come to people's mind is, where are you storing all this? How are you getting access to all this once you get that data in? And that is the part that I want to stress to you guys, is that you have to think about, you have to have a data manager in place thinking about all this and working with your IT, because we started, when we started this project up for our storage purposes, basically where we have our files and media. When we had that, we initially anticipated, oh yeah, 100 terabytes of data should be more. Sorry, not 50 terabytes worth of data should be enough to house all this data. That 50 terabytes went in a year and a half. We filled that media server up, and that was only videos and photos of the PERSARP areas. We still had the OSOP, the other ongoing work that was going on that we needed to start putting data on. So right now we've transitioned from an on-premise location to an Azure media server that is kind of on demand, can be expanded as needed. Right now we have about close to 75-ish terabytes worth of data that is in Azure that can be easily retrievable using CityWorks or InfoAsset Planner when we are doing the analyzing of the data and getting all that done. So just keep that in mind. For every CCTV inspection that we have a video that is at least at the minimum 3 minutes long, at the max about maybe 20 minutes long. And if you take that into consideration, our average media file for CCTV was about a gig and a half. all our photos are about maybe half to a megabyte big. So as you do these, all this adds up. So you have to keep that in mind. Not only are you collecting data, but you're also collecting all this media that goes along with it that is used for assessment. Right? All right. So where InfoMaster has helped us with all this, right? So one major thing that we really was invested with InfoMaster for InfoAsset Planner was the ease of pulling all this data together and having having it accepting NASCO certified databases, right? That was the first thing that kind of made sure that, okay, we are getting NASCO certified database. We need an application that can easily consume this data and give us the results that we are looking for. The next thing we wanted to do was we wanted to make sure our consequences of failure were identified and in place, where it uses the proximity tool to figure out what if this pipe fails, what are the downstream effects of this, or what is the environmental effect of this, or what is the critical facility associated with these if these pipes would fail, right? So that was a second major point. And second was the scoring that goes along with it. InfoAsset Planner has a built-in scoring system that is associated that gets associated that goes out and gives all the defects a scoring from 1 through 5, 5 being the worst, 1 being negligible, gives that to all of our NASCO, PACP, MACP tools, so that we can have a score for every single asset that we have assessed. All right. And we also have built in additional logic, which I'll show you, that kind of, never adjust the score based off of multiple assessment types, right? So a given asset could have a smoke score, acoustic score, as well as a CCTV score. So it kind of looks at all three of them and then calculates the exact likelihood of failure as well. All right. This is basically our logic right here that I wanted to show you. And this is where this is one of the biggest shining points for InfoAsset Planner is you can have your logic and spit out the results that you want. A lot of this is built in, a little was customizable, but everything sitting in an InfoAsset Planner database helps us identify what needs to be tested, what needs CCTV, what needs to be acoustic, smoke, and all this. Okay.
What one question, Burhan, came up before you get too far into, I love seeing the decision trees and the creativity that kind of goes into those, but before you get too far into the InfoAsset Planner software, one data question was asked. Um, we are going through a Q's GraniteNet implementation and are going through the process of determining media storage. They suspect that their current data storage solution may later on need migration to a larger data, maybe cloud data storage. Were there any issues involved in this implementation process in terms of kind of linking up? You were mentioning just the large amounts of data, those media files from CCTV inspections, especially. But if you had to move that data from one data storage to another?
Yeah, so we did have that halfway through our project, right? We maxed out at our server, so we couldn't put any storage on there, and that's when we went back to the drawing board and discussed whether we want to do an on-premise thing, buy a bigger data set, or do we want to go to the Azure cloud and have that scalability factor, which they have and which they advertise. And it was a very simple fix. Once we identified which way we wanted to go, there was literally 2 settings that we had to change. One was a setting in InfoAsset Planner. Whenever you create a new InfoAsset Planner project, or after the fact, there's a place where you identify where your media server is. So that one thing we had to change up from the old media server to the new media server. And the second part was in our Scream database. It's again, there's a table that has your configuration file information in it about your servers, where your logs go, where your media goes. So we just had to switch out the basically the server name from what it was to the Azure Cloud Server name, and then basically we were up and running. There was no downtime in place that was affected by changing configurations. It was more, the downtime was, okay, do we want to continue on premise, or do we want to go Azure Cloud, and then how much do we want to ask for, and that's the thing right there.
Yeah, and this is something Innovyze is also kind of progressing towards. I mean, this question mentioned kind of cloud storage right now. As you're mentioning, InfoAsset Planner just kind of points to, excuse me, wherever your media data is, and that can be adjusted pretty easily, like you're saying. I'm glad that was uh, pretty simple for you all. But where we're going is definitely looking at, okay, how can we start to store your media data, your pictures in our
Yeah,
Info 360 cloud? So if that's something of interest to anyone out there, please do let us know.
yeah.
Burhan.
All right. So as you can see, now I'm going to get to some of the boring stuff, which is our decision logic and how we came about of it. But basically, it was a lot of work with with Innovyze getting this, because we had certain things that were not out of the box. We kind of needed to add to it, and they were able to help us get a lot of this implemented. So this is just our basic logic that tells us, okay, do I have an assessment, a tier 1 assessment for it? Is the pipe in the right diameter? If not, does it need CCTV, a TISIT inspection? And this is our basic diagram that tells us, look at our entire infrastructure and give me the bucket for TISIT, give me the bucket where I need to go do some smoke, acoustic, or if I already have smoke and acoustic, does it meet this certain thresholds that we have identified here. I hope you can see my mouse when I hover over it, but have these thresholds in place, and then whether another a CCTV is needed for it or not. Uh, another logic that we had was basically for all the stuff that we do a CCTV on. We wanted to, as soon as we get that data in, we wanted to run it to identify where these urgent rehab actions are, right? So anything that has a multiple MSAs, which is abandoned surveys, or blocks, or obstacles, or holes and stuff like that, we wanted to go ahead and get those identified and get it over to the county so that we can go out, get the crews to go do the maintenance for it, and not have to wait till we are ready to run a rehab package for it, right? And then the last is our rehab logic. Basically, for any given asset that we have an assessment for, will fall under some of these categories, right? And the major two categories we needed was the rehab category and the preventive maintenance category. And this is where Scream and InfoAsset Planner kind of played together to tell us where it needs to go and what bucket it needs to fall in. So we a lot of the rehab logic on this side, a lot of it was out of the box. Some of it was a little more working with Innovyze and getting the right criteria set up so that it fell into the replace or line or point repair. And we also see these assessment. Those are the areas where it was very close. We couldn't, the tool could not tell us whether it needs to be a rehab or what part of rehab it needs to go into, or if it's on a maintenance schedule. So those are the things that we would then forward to our engineers, our experts that would further look into the videos and the assessment and say, okay, we can go ahead and put this on a preventive cycle for maybe 12 months, right? So basically how this looks is these are stuff we need someone to look at and tell us what bucket to go into. And as we go down this part is, these are very good, don't need to worry about it for 10 years, or these right here are, okay, we need to monitor this. It's not bad yet, but it may get bad in about 12 months. So let's go back and CCTV these. So not only were we helping the client with finding what needs to be fixed now, but also helping them get a maintenance cycle put into place so that they can better plan for going out and CCTVing at a later date, or do some kind of maintenance at a later date so that they can be on top of all this data that's coming in. All right. Okay. And again, this is also this is the manhole side where we do the urgent manhole, where we see some of these tools. And these are all standard NASCO PACP codes that we brought in, that gets entered when they do assessment. And we just selected the ones that we thought needed those urgent actions, and we query that out from the database. And similar to the gravity means, this is the manhole logic, which worked out, that just tells us what bucket to put it on. All right. So here is basically a screenshot of how InfoAsset Planner looks. Right. You have all your assessment data here. So here you can see how many different assessment databases I have, and then that we had to go through and assess. And then here is where my LOFs gets calculated, my risk, and then my rehab plans. And this is what our engineers on the county side really liked when they saw when we were giving them those buckets that had that they need to review, the assess buckets. They could open the InfoAsset Planner, open up the project. They could see the profile view of the pipe, where all the defects are. They can see spatially where all the defects are along the pipes. And then if you see on the right, it also gives you the default rehab based off of the decision logic that we had, that they can look at to see, okay, this is a rehab that the logic spit out. Is that correct? And what does it need to change? So one benefit of this was, when we started this project, we had to make sure our logic was working based off of the logic that the engineers had, right? So this tool right here helped us tremendously. You can see there's a play button here and a camera button here. Basically, you can select any location on this profile view, hit play, and it will open up that video right where you set to open it up the video at. Or if you clicked on a defect and clicked on the camera, the picture associated with that defect would show up, so that you can look at it in real time. You can fast forward it or rewind it as needed and go through that assessment. So you see how having all this assessment data, having everything in the right place, kind of helps your engineers, helps your decision makers make sure that they're getting the right results. And then having everything color coded and scored the way it should be helped us not only validate our decision logic, but we made a lot of edits to our decision logic initially, just so that we can make sure that the decision logic's result matches what the engineer's result is. The computer is not going to replace the engineer at all, right? But we wanted to make sure that the things that the engineers are looking at is the thing that they need to focus on. Let's take care of the low-hanging fruit, and we know if we see 5 holes in the pipe, we automatically know we need to do something. We either need to line it, or we need to replace it, depending on the size of the pipe and the distance they are, right? So the easy stuff, let's take it off of their buckets, let them focus on the important stuff and help us get those decision logics in place. And what this fed was the rehab packages, the design build packages that the county has put into place, so that we can get the work done. We have 4 contractors out right now doing the rehab work that has been identified over the past 4 or 5 years of this assessment. So now we are on the tail end of that side, where we have to take that updated rehab and put that back in, and that's where we are going to start leveraging the life cycle functionality of InfoAsset Planner, that once the rehab is done, now look at the rehab that's done and now update the life cycle of that pipe, because it kind of needs to be set back to 0. It's not in midterm anymore, because if we replace that pipe, then it should be 0. It shouldn't be at some other consequence of failure or likelihood of failure. All right. So this, I just had some zoomed in views of the different areas. And this is what we used for our packaging. We were able to geographically group our areas so that we could give it to the engineers and then have them send it out to the DB firms for pricing, right? So they could see, okay, this is the area, this is how much we need to line or we need to replace, these are how many point repairs we have, and the green ones that you see are just on a maintenance cycle, so we can ignore those. But this, they get an idea of, okay, how far apart are all my assessments, you know, how much startup time I'm going to need, what all needs to be done on this project. And then we had certain dollar figure amounts that we had to stay within. I don't know exactly the amount yet. I don't know exactly the amount, but that's also built in so that it stops, it caps it at that dollar amount, and then that's your project area that it looks at. Okay. And these are just some numbers. This is coming out of Click, how the PRSARP area, which was about roughly 900 linear miles of the 2,700 linear miles that we assessed starting in 2015 all the way up until mid 2019 or mid to late 2019. So the 900 linear miles of assessment data and roughly about 30,000 manholes. Where do they fit in the whole scheme of things, right? When we started this project, we were saying about 20% of everything that we assess will go to a rehab action, be it lining, point repair, and replace. And as we were doing this, we kept on looking at our gauges, and we saw that we were pretty much in par with what we were saying. And that too is 16%. We were saying 20. We were saying 20 to 25. So we kind of also help the county save money, right? Because if they're out and doing CCTV of all that 900 miles, that's a lot of money out of their pocket as well. Smoke and acoustic is a lot smaller hit to your pocket compared to CCTV. So instead of, you know, 80% of all that went directly to a maintenance schedule, and we only needed to focus on that 16% that we had to go out CCTV and figure out of that 16% what is the breakout that we went into, right? And then the assessment was the ones you could see that the software took care of about 96% of your assets. So that now we are also saving the engineers time, where they only need to look at 3% of the data, not the 20% that is coming out of what we needed them to go CCTV. So not only were we able to help the county save money, but we were also able to help some of them with the data that they were looking at, not wasting their time looking at stuff that they did not want to do. So efficiently look at all the data that's coming in. All right, and this is just a thing I like to show across the board, how everything fair where they sat in. So if you look at of the 900 linear miles that we assessed, you know, 7% of it went to replace, 5% went to point repair, 4% went to lining. Everything else has a maintenance schedule that it needs to go through, that we are already in place and doing the follow-up CCTV assignments, because we are basically from the start of the project, all the ones that were identified as re-CCTV in 12 months, 2 years, 3 years, all of those have come to pass already, and we've gone out and reassessed those as well. So so those assessments are happening now in conjunction with the remaining of the county that we have not even looked at. There's still a few areas where we haven't looked at it yet. All right. So, you know, what are our major accomplishments, right? So we designed over roughly about 900 linear miles of rehab. We've constructed over 420 linear feet of rehab. We've given out 96 million in contracts for design and build, and we've completed our first design build in June 2020, and we are in the middle of our second design build and a third design build, and we've overall helped the county reduce their SSOs. And the major thing is, anytime EPA comes calling, or the mayor comes calling, or any of the representatives come calling, we have all the data in one place, which we can spit out to them using, at the moment, Click. In the future, it will be Power BI, and they can see how the entire project is working and where all the work is going. All right. And the path forward, we are in the middle of our OSAP contract. As of now, we've out of the 1900 linear miles that was left over, we have done another 700 linear miles of data assessed that is sitting to be ready for review and packaged for rehab, as well as we started a whole new project for tackling other large diameter issues to help with capacity restoration and all that. And we are all now looking at one GIS, which was our biggest challenge, and we're cleaning up everything real time using all that, and training the county staff to use all of our tools. All right. Well, I think I talked a lot. I said a lot. So questions?
Perfect. Thanks, Burhan. Yeah, a couple questions coming in here. One, it looks like, this what you're focused on here was pretty sewer focused. Was there also a water aspect, evaluating that in terms of risk analysis in this
No,
project?
we were strictly we were strictly contracted to do wastewater. Water asset is done by someone else, but there's also collaboration with the GIS and the other team that does the water side to implement something similar to that. But the priority for us and the contract was CD, consent decree driven, and it was more on the wastewater side.
Okay, perfect. So just to clarify that for folks. A couple questions coming in here. Did DeKalb do asset life models?
In the beginning, no, but now we have that baseline data as well, and we have about 5 years of data, and then we are looking into now getting that set up and in place so that we can better evaluate these pipes.
Yeah, that definitely takes a lot of data to do that. That's something I think we've definitely seen in Advise, and kind of the holy grail, where you want to get to. You want to be able to predict this pipe, because of its condition, is going to last this amount of time. But there's a lot of variability there, and tracking that down takes quite a bit of data. We can provide the tools, but at the end of the day, it's nothing without the data and the people out there to gather that. Let's see, how often do you see having to redo the CCTV and smoke testing, et cetera, the other kind of inspections?
So smoke and acoustic is the first time go around that we do 100% on all of our assets. We don't do another smoke and acoustic out of it. The main purpose of our smoke and acoustic is to identify the pipes that really need further looking into in a CCTV. A lot of our CCTV that we yielded a lot of ours were in the 12-year to 2-year mark. I would say about 80% fell into that because of the infrastructure that it is, right? We have a lot of old pipes in our system dated in the 40s and the 50s. So they're coming towards end of life. And we were in those high populated, high density areas already where those pipes were getting, they were that's where a lot of our re-CCTV was going. But then it was a kind of a drop off, and then it would start back up at year 7, 8, and 10 was the next big batch that we got. We got very few in the 3, 4, 5-year ranges. But now that trend is going that way because we are going to more rural areas and stuff like that. So the hit is not as heavy on those pipes there, and those are also some newly developed, like in the late 80s, early 90s. I don't know how well you know DeKalb County, but I've grown up in Georgia. So DeKalb County, basically, if you know Georgia, if you know Atlanta, we have this big circle called 285. Before 96, before the Olympics, there was really nothing outside of it but farmland. So a lot of the infrastructure that is put in that are in these areas now have been after 95, 96. So they're old, but they're not as old as some of these the priority areas that we were saying that were in preserve. So those are now coming out to be the 5 year, 7 year mark. But initially, when we did the preserve areas, they were more in the 1 to 2 year ranges that we had to go back out and look at.
Gotcha. Yeah, just thinking about what you said, that you had a lot of pipes kind of end up in the 7, 8, 9 year range in terms of CCTV instead of kind of the 5, 4, 3 year kind of CCTV cycle. Do you think those pipes that ended up in kind of that longer range without InfoAsset Planner maybe, or without some of the decision tree, kind of the thought put into those, would have been CCTV'd sooner when they didn't need to be, or I'm just kind of curious?
Yeah, possibly because when we started this, the idea was to 100% CCTV everything, and not everything needs a CCTV at the moment. You know, some are basically another benefit that came about with this was our laterals program came out of this assessment data, where the issue was the lateral, not the pipe itself. So we had that whole 2 year project where we looked, just analyzed the data. We didn't even go out and do any assessment. It was all the smoke data based off of the information we got when we smoked all of these pipes, where we identified the areas that needed to be fixed, that where the owner needed to fix some of their stuff. So a lot of that savings came about, and we used InfoMaster from day one, right? And so it was built on the premise of all this that we were doing, and we leveraged what InfoAsset Planner had to make sure that we get all the right results. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great to hear. I've definitely heard similar things with even utilities here where I'm in Colorado using the tool. They were just CCTVing kind of block by block by block according to their, you got a CCTV this amount of pipe per, every year kind of thing. And then with InfoAsset Planner, they were able to do that a little bit more intelligently, I guess, to really fine tune what they're CCTVing and prioritize, and then back up those decisions, right? It's one thing to be able to say, I think we need to CCTV this pipe versus the other pipe and just say that, but when you
Yeah.
have all the data gathered, that's good to hear that it was helpful to you in being able to kind of back up that decision making
Yeah.
in a really clear way, and that's
And
something that
if you
we
look
do.
at the pie chart that I have up, you can see the results, right? Where if even if we would 100% CCTV'd everything, look at over half of our pipes, we really didn't need to CCTV. The acoustic and smoke alone told us that we don't need to worry about these. These are fairly new pipes, or they haven't been used that much. So let's ignore that. Let's focus on the area that really needs it, right? So.
Mhm. And then it looks like we got time for one more question here, and then maybe some final summary. You mentioned InfoWorks CS. That's an Invise product for those of you who don't know, a legacy Invise product actually. Um, Earlier, was there a link between InfoWorks CS and InfoMaster, InfoAsset Planner? Kind of automated? Were you able to automate that, or was that a pretty manual process when you connected
That
those?
that was a manual process, but we had, since everything now lives in our SQL Microsoft SQL Server world, we are easily able to incorporate all of that together. Before we had to manually take an export out from CS and then import it into our Oracle GIS. Now that we've taken Oracle out of the question, it's all on SQL Server. There's ETL setup that does it on a monthly basis, that syncs everything together, because we needed the CS outputs for capacity planning, right? Where can we expand pipes? We have all these requests for the new businesses and new developments and everything. We needed that also in place. So right now, everything is in a SQL Server database, our InfoAsset Planner database, our CS database, and our GIS as well. And they all get synced on a monthly basis between the three.
That's awesome. That's great to hear. And I think, yeah, that's the benefit of having a CS being built so that you can integrate with the SQL Server backend, and then InfoAsset Planner kind of using piggybacking on a lot of Esri resources, so that that database also is pretty open there, so you can develop a lot of tools to connect things easily.
And the
Um,
one thing I'll just mention on the syncing part, the one thing that out of the box Esri says that you can set up replications, which you can to do all this. But however, in order for you to have replications, the schemas have to match between the three sources, and that's not the case, right? Because Info Asset Planner has some additional fields that we need for calculating purposes, right? And so does CS. CS has some additional network information put into the schema. So we couldn't really use replication. That's why we had to set up these manual ETLs on a scheduled basis and the backend to set that up. So that's one thing I wanted to kind of tell you, that replication, yes, is what we are doing, but at a different scale.
yeah,
Yeah.
perfect. All right, we're one past the hour. Thank you, everybody, for joining. There's a survey at the end. If you need PDH credits, please mention that in the survey. We'll be distributing the recording. You'll see this on our website pretty soon. And again, you've got a couple more seconds here to download the handouts, which we'll make available on the website, the presentation slides, I think, as well. Thank you, Burhan. Thank you. I see Linda and Javi have also joined from last week. Thank you to all of DeKalb County and Jacobs for those of you that were able to join these back-to-back DeKalb County Jacobs presentations here. Um, Anything to close us out here, Burhan?
No, nothing.
No? Okay,
Basically, just make sure data management is key. Think about it in the beginning, not after. It shouldn't be an afterthought because there's a lot that goes along with it.
perfect, perfect. Again, you hopefully saw our contact information at the end. Always happy to help out, and hopefully see you next week. All right, thanks everybody. Have a great Tuesday.